Alright, good day everyone. So today we're gonna be discussing about carnivorous plant substrates. But before we begin, I'd like to invite everyone to please subscribe to the channel and hit on the notification bell to get the latest updates from the hobbyist. So yeah, let's begin. So, substrates. As you can see here, we have a lot of substrates on the table. So we have live sphagnum moss, we have pumice, we have black lava rock sand, we have cocoa peat, we also have, what's this, perlite, and cocoa coir. And then there's also akadama soil, there's also, I don't know, Java moss, whatever. So there's a lot of substrates on the market, and it's easy to get confused as to what substrate do you need. Okay, so let's take a step back for a second. And, you know, instead of looking at the names of what works, let's look at why they work. So okay, so there are three concepts at play here. So that the first one is the aeration of the substrate, the second one is the moisture retention, and the third one is the TDS, or total dissolved solids. So aeration is the ability of the substrate to wick away water from your pot fast enough before it actually dissolves the substrate into mud. So the idea is, if you pour some water on this pot, what you want is it should drain all of the water outside of the pot and not retain a lot of or most of the water in the pot. So the way you should see it is, if you pour some water on this pot, it's not supposed to form a puddle of water in here, especially and if it does, it's probably just gonna stay there for a few seconds and then it's all gone. So that's a well aerated soil. So if you have a poorly aerated soil, what will happen is it's gonna form like a puddle here, it's gonna stay there for a while, and then it's gonna turn the whole substrate into mud. So that's kind of like a poorly aerated substrate. Okay, so next concept is moisture retention. So now, even though we have a well-aerated soil or a well-aerated substrate, what we want is a substrate that retains most of the moisture inside the substrate. So for example, here, so this is live sphagnum moss. So if you touch it, it feels damp, it feels wet, but it's not keeping a lot of the water inside. I mean, there's no puddle of water, it doesn't look like mud. So here we have a substrate that retains moisture. So usually for carnivorous plants, you want the moisture to be retained for at least the whole day. So at least 24 hours. So if your substrate dries up in less than 24 hours, then it's bad. And if your substrate is wet for more than like 3-4 days, then it's bad also. So it's retaining a lot of that moisture. And finally, the most important concept is the total dissolved solids, or TDS. So it's measured using a TDS meter like this one. So you don't have to buy the exact one. There's a lot of TDS meters out there that are more cost-effective or cheaper, especially if you go to Shopee. So any of that actually works. So the purpose of a TDS meter is to measure the dissolved organics and inorganics in your water. So when you say organics and inorganics, anything from calcium, nitrate, ammonia, potassium, nitrogen, what else? Anything, silicates, all of that, they all register in the TDS meter. They're all bunched together in the TDS meter. But the thing is, the TDS meter measures the quantity of organics and inorganics in water. So they don't really, you really can't put it on top of this and get a reading. So to do that, what we normally do is we drain this in water, and whatever is the water that we collected from where we washed these substrates, that's what we measure. So you will also, you can, if you recall our flushing video, when that's basically how we measure the TDS. Okay, so with that out of the way, how do you choose the correct substrate for your plants? So the correct substrate actually, and you'll probably be surprised by this, depends on where you are situated. So if you're indoors, like here in my room, in our studio, so we have most of our plants are here. The humidity level here is quite low. Actually, the humidity level here ranges from 32% to 50%, and that's it. So if you compare that, if you go outdoors, the humidity level is much higher, especially here in the Philippines, since we are in a tropical country. So outside, you'd probably have like a 50 to 70% humidity. So depending on where you are, again, depends on where you are. So if you live in the countryside, your humidity is probably going to be higher because there's more trees. Here in the metro, it's probably going to be lower since most of everything around us is concrete. So again, it depends on where you put your plants. So the best way to do it is try to measure the humidity first, okay? And then using the three concepts that we've discussed earlier, the aeration, the moisture retention, and the TDS, then you can choose which one works for you. So how do you measure the TDS first? So for example, so what you want to do is, for example, you want to mix two types of substrate. So here we have, I think this is this is Perlite. So what you want to do is you put it in a eco bag. So the nice thing about eco bag is most of the substrate here won't fall off the eco bag, and there's tiny holes on the eco bag, so when you put water, the tendency is most of the water, or all of the water, will just drain out at the bottom of it, or on all sides of the bag basically. So whatever water that you collect from the eco bag, you measure the TDS of that. And for carnivorous plants, your target TDS for the whole substrate that you put on a pot is supposed to be less than 50 parts per million. So you can just imagine if your source water, so first you measure the source water first. So say your source water, it has 70 parts per million, and then you washed a bag of perlite, and then you measured it at 73, then you could assume that the TDS of the bag of the perlite in the bag is 3 or 73, right? So how do you measure it correctly? So what we do is, when we're washing substrates, the first few washes, like 4 or 5 times, you wash it using your faucet water, whatever it is, and then the last wash, or the 5th or 6th wash, what you're gonna use is some low TDS water. So you could use like air conditioned runoff water or RODI if you have one. For us, we use RODI. You can also use distilled. So from there, you could measure how much the TDS is, and then if it's still high, then you wash it with the regular water again, and then try to measure it with low TDS water. So that's kind of what we do when we're measuring the TDS. So now you have so normally, at least from our experience, we found that most of the substrates, or all of the substrates that you find here, are capable of achieving low TDS. So again, that's perlite, coco peat, live sphagnum moss, this black lava rock sand, and pumice. And a lot of these substrates you could buy from your local fish store, especially the ones that are selling substrates for planted tanks. You could also buy them on your garden supply, so with whichever floats your boat. So from there, depending again on where you are going to put your plants, that's when you determine the combination. So how do you make the combination? So for example, live sphagnum moss, out of all of these substrates, live sphagnum moss or dried sphagnum moss has the best moisture retention out of all of them. So if this gets wet, it can absorb like twice its weight, if I'm not mistaken. So it can absorb at least like twice its weight. And then the next one is coco peat. So this one also absorbs a lot of moisture, at least like half of its weight. So yeah, so both of these substrate can absorb a lot of moisture. So again, so what about aeration? So for some, especially if you're using live sphagnum moss, it's well aerated. So on its own, you could actually just use sphagnum moss and you're good to go. Okay. But again, that and I can't stress this enough. It depends on where you are gonna put the plants. So if you're gonna put this outdoors, probably number one, it's gonna cook on the hay, so it's gonna dry up easier. And number two, it's live and it doesn't like being on the sunlight, on direct sunlight. So it loves the shade. So that's something to consider. So when you're planting it outdoors and especially on direct sunlight, some growers tend to use coco peat instead. But again, you could always mix and match them, whichever you want, to give you that optimum. Again, so what we're targeting is that your substrate should hold at least 24 hours of moisture. So it should not dry up the whole day. And then after a day, and the maximum is probably it should already be dry by 2 to 3 days. Okay. Now, so what about these other fillers, or if you will? So perlite or this black lava rock stones or black lava rock sand and pumice, we use that to provide more aeration, especially if you're using coco peat. So if you're using coco peat, and you found that your substrate isn't drying up fast enough, you could add more of these fillers or more of these stones. So you could put some pumice, you could put some sand, you could put some perlite and mix it with your coco peat to give you, and then look at the performance of your substrate. Is it drying fast enough? Is it still wet after a few days? Then from there you could probably adjust the mixture. So in my case, I'd suggest that you start with a 50-50 mixture. 50% of the more finer material like coco peat or live sphagnum moss or sphagnum moss, and then 50% of the aeration material, or like perlite or the pumice or the sand. And then if you notice that it's drying up too fast, then you could add some more of until you get the mixture that's right for your planting area. That's why I don't really recommend a specific ratio, because it really depends on where you're gonna put the plant. So here, since we have low moisture inside this room. So now it's measuring 32 degrees. 32%. So you can just imagine it's a bit low. So most of my mixtures here have more coco peat or more sphagnum moss. So sometimes I don't even mix sphagnum moss with perlite anymore, since it dries up fairly quickly. Like in a couple of days it's already dry. So, and that's what we want. So yeah, so that's kind of in a nutshell how to choose or how to mix substrates together. So now another question you would probably be asking is, when do we change the substrate? Because over time, of course, these are still organics. So over time, they will turn to soil. And when that happens, chances are it's gonna cause root rot or some problems on your plants. So for example, I'll give you an example here. So this one used to be coco peat and sand mixture. So if you notice, a lot of the sand and coco peat has already mixed together. Let me see if I can put some light. Okay, so a lot of it has already mixed together and it's already turned to mush. So in this case, what we're gonna do is we have to replant them already. As you can see, there's some algae already growing. So at this point, you need to change you should repot the plant. So a good look on your plants, the substrate should look like this. So it's dry, it dries up, it's not damp. So yeah, that's still good. And here, so this one again, we're using live sphagnum moss. As you can see, there's really a lot of growth already. It's overtaken most of the pot. So this one you don't need to change, but since this is live sphagnum moss, all you need to do is just trim some of it and then use it for your other plants. So yeah, that's basically the maintenance there. And then of course, just like what we've discussed on our previous video, what you want to do is you make sure that at least once a month or twice a month you will flush the substrate by pouring in some low TDS water from the top and letting the substrate drain on its own to remove some of the minerals or some of the inorganics and organics that are building up on your pots, and making sure that your substrate remains low TDS. So yeah, I guess that's it, and that's basically it. And if you have any other questions, feel free to drop us a comment and ask us more about these substrates. So yeah, I hope you've learned a lot from our video today. I know it's quite long than what I wanted, but anyway, yeah, that's it for me, folks. Again, thank you guys for watching, and I will see you guys soon. Peace.